In the middle of nowhere, far from the noise of cities, there sits a forgotten village called Obalanga. It's the kind of place where time moves slow, but gossip moves fast. The roads are dusty and broken, houses are built with mud and hope, and children play with empty tins, dreaming of a life they've only seen on TV screens at the barbershop. There's no internet, the power cuts more than it stays, and the nearest hospital is a 2-hour ride away, if you can even find a motorbike willing to take you. People wake up early, not because they want to, but because poverty doesn't let them sleep. Everyone knows everyone. You can't sneeze without someone across the village knowing what color your handkerchief was. If someone buys a new radio, the whole village talks about it for a week. If a girl smiles at a boy, it becomes a love story by sunset. Rumors are the lifeblood here. Truth doesn't matter as much as how juicy the story sounds. Women gather at the well, not just for water, but for whispers. Men talk under mango trees, pretending to discuss farming, but really sharing the latest gossip. In Obalanga, dreams are dangerous. People don't dream big here, not because they don't want to, but because dreaming feels like betrayal, like you're insulting the reality everyone else has accepted. If you say you want to be rich, people laugh. If you want to be famous, they shake their heads and say, "Who do you think you are?" So most dreams die young, buried under responsibility, survival, and silence. Girls are raised to be wives, boys to be farmers, and anyone who dares to think different is called crazy or cursed. But even in all this struggle, Obalanga is alive. Kids still laugh, mothers still dance at weddings, and hope, though quiet and tired, still exists. It hides in the corners of hearts, waiting for a reason to rise again. And that's where our story begins. In this little village, where poverty screams louder than dream, and where one girl's destiny is about to shake everything Obalanga thought it knew. Zahira was the kind of girl who walked like she didn't belong in a village. Her eyes were always searching, looking past the broken roads, past the gossiping neighbors, past the worn-out stalls that sold the same things every day. She was 22, sharp as a blade, and full of ideas too big for a place as small as Obalanga. While other girls her age were getting married and settling down, Zahira spent her nights sketching dress designs in a worn-out notebook, using a pencil she'd sharpened so much it was now shorter than her pinky finger. She dreamed of lights, cameras, and runways. She imagined her name printed on glossy magazines, not because she wanted fame, but because she wanted freedom. Freedom from the daily grind, from the struggle of survival, from a life that felt like it had already been written for her. In her mind, she was already in the city, walking into a fashion studio, not smelling of smoke and roasted corn, but of confidence and perfume. But dreams don't feed hungry stomachs. Her family lived day by day, barely making enough to eat. Her father roasted corn by the roadside, standing under the hot sun from morning till night, waving flies away with a tired hand. Her mother helped when she wasn't coughing or lying down from illness. Zahira sold corn too, not because she wanted to, but because they needed her. Every coin they made went straight into food, medicine, or school fees for her younger siblings, if there was any left. People in the village liked Zahira, but they also whispered about her. "That one thinks she's better than us," they'd say, always drawing in that useless book. They didn't understand her dreams, and many didn't care to, but Zahira never stopped dreaming. She'd saved pictures from old magazines, torn from pages that travelers had left behind. She kept them in a secret folder under her bed, images of models in bright dresses, fabrics that looked like heaven, colors that made her heart race. Sometimes, late at night, when the village was quiet and the only sound was the distant cry of a night bird, Zahira would sit by the window and stare at the moon. She'd imagine it was a spotlight, and the breeze carrying the scent of corn was actually perfume from a runway crowd. These were the only moments where she allowed herself to believe, just believe, that maybe, just maybe, her life could be more than this. But belief doesn't pay bills, and no matter how high Zahira's dreams flew, the weight of her reality always pulled them back down. Her family needed her. There was no one else. Her dreams, as beautiful as they were, came second to survival. Every day, she had to choose. Keep chasing a life she wasn't sure she'd ever reach, or stay in the only life she knew and carry her family's burdens quietly. It was a battle she fought in silence every single day. And even though the villagers never said it to her face, they were watching, waiting. Some wanted to see her fail, to prove that dreaming big was foolish. Others secretly hoped she'd make it, so they could say, "We knew her. She came from here." But for now, Zahira was just the girl with a notebook full of dreams, standing behind a small corn stall, smiling at customers with a face that hid 1,000 silent screams. She had no rich uncle, no sponsor, no phone filled with city contacts. All she had was her talent, her fire, and a heart too stubborn to stop dreaming. But in a place like Obalanga, even that felt like too much. Or maybe, just maybe, it was exactly what would change everything. Zahira's world began to fall apart slowly, like a roof leaking drop by drop, until one day the entire ceiling caves in. It started with her mother's cough, a dry, painful sound that echoed through their tiny mud-walled house late at night. At first, they thought it was just the weather. Then weeks passed, and the cough got worse. Her mother grew weaker, started missing the corn stall more often, until one day she couldn't get up at all. The local clinic was miles away, and even if they managed to get there, the medicines weren't free. Zahira watched her father pace back and forth, rubbing his forehead with his dusty hands, whispering prayers under his breath. They had no saving, no backup, just corn and prayers. Her father was a proud man, but desperation is stronger than pride. One morning, while Zahira was roasting corn under the sun, her father disappeared. He came back late, quieter than usual, and when Zahira asked where he had gone, he simply said, "I've done what I had to." Days later, the truth came out. He had borrowed money from Gandhi, a man known in Obalanga, for two things: his endless money and his endless cruelty. Gandhi smiled too much for someone who destroyed lives with debt. His money came fast, but so did his threats when payment was late. And everyone in the village knew, once you owed Gandhi, you owed with your soul. At first, the borrowed money helped. Zahira's mother got some medicine, and for a moment, things looked like they might get better. But her recovery was slow, and the money was gone quicker than they expected. Then Gandhi showed up one evening, not alone, but with two men built like bricks, standing behind him like shadows. He didn't shout, he didn't argue, he simply said, "Time is up." The interest had doubled. What was once a helping hand now felt like a rope tightening around their necks. Zahira sat on the floor that night, her sketchbook open but untouched. Her heart was heavy. She knew the kind of hole they had fallen into, and she knew dreams didn't matter when your family was drowning. Her father looked older than ever, his hands trembling as he counted coins that could barely buy a meal. Zahira didn't cry. She couldn't. Crying was a luxury in a home where survival was a full-time job. Then came the final blow. Gandhi returned the next day, but this time with a strange offer, a marriage proposal, not for himself, but from someone else, someone even more unexpected. "Mako wants to marry your daughter," Gandhi said, almost like a joke. Zahira blinked. Mako, the village beggar, the one who slept near the market stalls, with dusty clothes and silent eyes, the man everyone ignored, that Mako. Her stomach turned. It didn't make sense. Why would a beggar want to marry her? Gandhi just smiled wider. "He'll clear your father's debt." Every single coin's silence fell over their house like a curse. Zahira's father looked down. Her mother turned her face away. Zahira waited for someone to say no, to laugh it off. But no one did. No one could. Her father's eyes were full of shame, her mother's full of tears. Zahira knew then, this wasn't a question. It was a decision already made. They were broke, broken, and buried in debt. And this strange offer was the only rope left dangling into their sinking boat. The villagers found out within hours. News in Obalanga always spread faster than light. People whispered behind Zahira's back, some with pity, others with amusement. "From designer dreams to a beggar's bride," they said. Zahira wanted to scream, to disappear, to wake up from the nightmare. But reality kept knocking louder. Her mother needed care, her father needed saving, and all she had to offer was herself. And so, a young girl with dreams stitched in paper and hope folded in her heart stood at the edge of the biggest decision of her life. Not for love, not for future, but to save a family that had nothing left but her. The sun hadn't even fully risen when whispers started floating through the dusty paths of Obalanga. Birds hadn't begun their songs, but the village had already caught fire with one unbelievable rumour. Mako, the beggar who lived under the old mango tree near the market, had sent a marriage proposal to Zahira, the same Zahira with dreams bigger than the entire village. The Zahira everyone believed was born for more than just this life. And now, A beggar wanted her as his wife. People were stunned. Some laughed. Some gasped. Others simply refused to believe it. Mako, the man who barely spoke, who wore the same ragged shirt every day, who didn't even own a proper mat to sleep on. How could he even dare to ask for a girl like Zahira? The villagers had always seen Mako as nothing. He never begged loudly or chased after food like the others. He just sat there, watching people with quiet eyes, almost like he was waiting for something. No one really knew his story, and now, out of nowhere, he wanted to marry the girl everyone thought would leave Obalanga and never look back. Zahira was in shock. At first, she thought it was a cruel joke, maybe one of Gandhi's twisted games. But when her father sat her down, eyes heavy with guilt, she knew it was real. Mako had gone to Gandhi himself. He offered to pay off every shilling her father owed, but only if Zahira agreed to marry him. Just like that. No dates, no romance, no dignity. Her freedom, her future, her dreams suddenly became the price of survival. She stared at her father, hoping, praying he would say no, that he would stand up and protect her. But he didn't. He couldn't. The debt had choked him. Her mother stayed silent, tears sliding down her face like they had given up. And Zahira felt something break inside her. How could he even look at me like that? She whispered. Does he think I'm that cheap? But deep down, she knew this wasn't about love. This wasn't about respect. This was a transaction, a deal made in desperation. Mako had the money, her family had the debt, and she was the currency. Outside, the gossip only grew louder. Women shook their heads with pity. Men chuckled, mocking Zahira's fall from Miss Big Dreams to Beggar's Bride. Children even sang twisted songs about her. The shame crawled under her skin like fire. Her dream of becoming a fashion designer, of walking the streets of Lagos with her head held high, now felt like a fairy tale someone ripped apart and burned in front of her. She tried to fight it. She screamed. She begged her parents. But hunger has a way of silencing logic. Sickness doesn't wait for dreams, and debt doesn't care about dignity. Slowly, painfully, Zahira realized her voice didn't matter. Her no didn't count. The deal had already been made, and the village, with all its noise and judgment, just watched, like it was a movie meant for their entertainment. What made it worse? Mako didn't say a word. He didn't come to her, didn't apologize, didn't explain, just sat in his usual spot under the mango tree, eyes hidden behind the same dirty cap, still quiet, still strange, still full of secrets. And Zahira, she was now caught between rage and fear, shame and sorrow. A girl with city dreams, now tied to a man the village never looked at twice. And no one, not even she, understood why. The day Zahira was forced to marry Mako felt like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. She had cried until her eyes were swollen, screamed until her throat hurt, begged her parents to stop it. But nothing changed. Her father looked away every time she pleaded, and her mother sat like a shadow, quiet and broken. They said it was for the family. They said it was the only way to survive. But for Zahira, it felt like a funeral for her dreams. The wedding was rushed. No music, no joy, no celebration. Just whispers, pity-filled stares, and mocking smirks from villagers who had nothing better to do. The same people who once praised Zahira for her beauty and brains now stood there, shaking their heads. Some women clicked their tongues. Men whispered dirty jokes behind cupped hands. Children pointed at her as if she was part of a cruel joke. From catwalk dreams to marrying trash, they whispered. The words pierced her more deeply than any knife ever could. She wore a simple dress, not by choice, but because that's all they had. Her eyes held no sparkle. Her lips refused to smile. She didn't look like a bride. She looked like someone walking into prison. And beside her stood Mako, silent as always, wearing clean clothes for the first time anyone could remember. But even in that moment, he didn't meet her eyes. He just stood there, calm and quiet, as if none of it mattered. Zahira's hands trembled as she repeated the vows. Her voice was barely a whisper. She didn't want this. She didn't choose this. She felt like she was being sold. When the priest declared them husband and wife, she didn't feel like a wife. She felt like a stranger in a story that wasn't hers. After the wedding, she didn't go home to a celebration. There was no dancing, no feasting, just silence. Her few friends didn't even come near. She sat alone in her new house, a small, quiet space near the market where Mako stayed. It smelled like dust and memories. There were no decorations, no warmth, just two strangers forced under one roof. That night, she didn't speak to him. She sat in the corner, holding herself, trying not to cry. Mako didn't come close. He simply laid on the floor, like he always did, and closed his eyes. Zahira watched him, confused and angry. Why did he do this to her? What did he gain by ruining her life? Days passed, and the village didn't forget. Every time she stepped out, people stared, some in pity, most in mockery. The girl who wanted Lagos now sells tomatoes beside a beggar, someone said once, and Zahira just kept walking, her pride buried under layers of shame. She hated the stares, hated the whispers, hated the silence between her and Mako, but most of all, she hated how powerless she felt. This wasn't a marriage, this was a punishment, and the village made sure she felt every moment of it. The girl who once dreamed of shining on fashion runways now walked through muddy paths, carrying pain no one cared to understand. Zahira had no interest in her new husband. To her, Mako was still the dirty, quiet beggar who had trapped her into a marriage she never wanted. But something about him didn't sit right. He wasn't acting like the man everyone thought he was. He didn't beg anymore, not even once. He never asked her for food. He didn't touch her or even talk much. And the strangest part, every night, after she had laid down to sleep, he would vanish into the darkness without a word. At first, she thought he might be going to meet other beggars or sleeping on the streets, like he used to. But when she woke up each morning, he was back, freshly bathed, clothes still clean, and never looking tired. Where was he going? What was he doing? The curiosity began to eat away at her anger. Then came the phone, a small black smartphone Zahira had never seen before. One evening, she spotted it when he left it charging beside the lamp. She picked it up, expecting to see pictures of trash, empty messages, or maybe some games. But the phone had no contacts, no photos, no apps, nothing at all. Just a clean screen and a single code-locked folder that she couldn't open. That was the moment she knew Mako was hiding something, and she was going to find out what. She started watching him closely, pretending to sleep but keeping her ears sharp. One night, she followed him. Slipping on her sandals, wrapping her scarf tightly, she walked behind him in the shadows, careful not to make a sound. He didn't go toward the market or the river. He walked down a narrow path that led out of the village, toward the old abandoned school building no one ever visited anymore. Zahira's heart pounded in her chest as she crouched behind a tree, watching. Mako walked up to the building and tapped something on his phone. A small light flickered inside. A few minutes later, another man came out from the darkness, and they exchanged a small package. Then another man arrived. Then another. Zahira's eyes widened. It was like a secret meeting. A group of men, all looking sharp, dressed too well for village life. And there was Mako, speaking with them like he belonged. No one treated him like a beggar. They nodded when he spoke. They listened. She rushed back home before he could see her. Her mind raced. Who was Mako, really? This wasn't just strange. It was unreal. She remembered how he never begged after their marriage, how he always had money to buy small things for the house, how he never asked her for help with anything. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't helpless. He was hiding in plain sight. The next morning, Zahira didn't look at him the same way. She served him breakfast, quietly watching his every move. Mako just nodded in thanks, like always, calm, unbothered. But now, Zahira's eyes were open. The man she thought had destroyed her dreams. He wasn't who he said he was. There was a storm behind his silence, and she was determined to uncover it. Her hate started to mix with confusion. Her disgust turned into suspicion. For the first time, Zahira wasn't just angry, she was intrigued. And what she was about to find out would change everything she believed about her life, her husband, and the future that still waited ahead. That night, Zahira couldn't sleep. Her thoughts were spinning like a storm. The way Mako walked, the way he never asked for anything, the way he vanished every night, none of it made sense. She had to know the truth. She waited until he quietly slipped out, just like all the nights before. But this time, she didn't stay behind. Wrapping her dupatta tightly around her face, she followed him, careful not to step on dry leaves or make a sound. Her heartbeat was loud in her ears, but her footsteps were soft. Mako didn't notice her. He walked with a purpose, as if he knew exactly where he was going. Zahira kept her distance. The moon was hidden behind clouds, and the village slept in silence. He didn't go to the market or the forest this time. Instead, he turned down a rarely used dirt path that led to the edge of the village, where there were no lights, no houses, just open land and silence. Zahira crouched behind a bush and waited, and then it happened. A black SUV rolled up, its windows dark like secrets. The engine purred quietly, as if even the car knew how to keep things hidden. Mako stepped forward, and the back door opened automatically. Zahira's eyes widened. He got in without hesitation. No fear, no confusion, like he belonged there. She stared, frozen. What beggar gets into a black SUV in the middle of the night? The car didn't speed away immediately. It stayed still for a moment. Zahira caught a glimpse of someone in the driver's seat wearing a suit. Another man was in the passenger seat, tapping something on a tablet. This wasn't some shady village deal. This was organized, clean, professional. It was like watching a scene from a movie, except this was her life. After a few minutes, the SUV drove off, swallowed by the night. Zahira stood there, shaken. Her breath was short. Her hands were trembling. Who was Mako? Who had she married? Not a beggar. Not some poor man with nothing to lose. He was something else. Someone else. She ran back home before Mako returned. Her heart thudded in her chest the whole way. Once inside, she paced the room, trying to understand. Maybe he was a criminal, or a secret agent, or someone hiding from a dangerous past. Every guess felt more impossible than the last. But one thing was now certain. Mako wasn't poor, and he wasn't helpless. Zahira didn't sleep that night. She just stared at the door, waiting for it to open. When Mako finally returned, he looked the same as always. Calm, quiet, invisible. But now, he wasn't invisible to her anymore. She watched him walk to his sleeping mat, stretch out, and close his eyes as if nothing had happened. But everything had changed. Zahira's fear was now tangled with curiosity. Her hate had turned into questions. And for the first time since their wedding, she whispered to herself, not in anger, but in wonder, "Who did I marry?" The next morning, Zahira couldn't look at Mako the same way. Her mind was racing with questions, but her lips stayed silent. She watched every move he made, how he calmly poured water, how he folded his blanket, how he never looked flustered or rushed. Something inside her had shifted. She had to know the truth, and this time, she didn't want to spy. She wanted answers, real ones. So she asked. At first, Mako didn't say anything. He looked at her, long and still, as if deciding something important. Then he sighed and walked to the edge of the room. There, from under an old floor mat, he pulled out a small black box. He opened it. Inside were papers, a sleek-looking smartphone, and a single photo of a girl smiling in a white dress. "My name," he began, "isn't really Mako." Zahira's breath caught. "I used to live in the city. I was a tech consultant. I helped startups grow. I didn't beg for coins. I built businesses. I was engaged to a woman I loved more than anything. She said she loved me back, until she saw someone richer." Zahira said nothing. She just stared at him, frozen. "She left me, just like that. No explanation, just a goodbye message. After that, I changed." Mako's voice was low, almost distant. "I stopped trusting faces that smiled too quickly. I stopped believing in words that sounded too sweet. I decided to test people, see who they really are. When they think I have nothing, I invested silently in companies. No name, no photos, just contracts. I became rich, but I never showed it." Zahira's mouth was dry. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "I came to this village," Mako continued, "because I wanted peace. I wanted to hide from a world that judged everything by wallets and cars. But then, I saw you. Not just your beauty, Zahira. I saw your fire, your dream to escape, and your pain. You reminded me of myself before the world broke me." Zahira felt her heart twist. "When your father came begging for help, I saw a chance. Not just to help you, but to know if you would see me. Even when I looked invisible, I offered marriage. Not to trap you. To test if someone could choose me for me, not my money." Tears welled in Zahira's eyes. All this time she thought she was the one being punished. But he was broken too. Mako walked closer and gently placed the photo of his lost fiancée in Zahira's hand. "She taught me how cruel love can be. I wanted to know if love could also be kind." Silence filled the room. Zahira didn't know whether to be angry, shocked, or sad. She had hated him, feared him, pitied him, And now, she didn't know what to feel. All she knew was, the man she married was not who she thought he was, not even close. And maybe, just maybe, neither was she. Zahira couldn't sleep that night. Her head was a battlefield. One side screamed betrayal. How dare he lie? How dare he test her like she was some experiment? The other side whispered guilt. He helped her family, saved her mother, cleared the debt. He gave without asking anything in return. But how could she forgive someone who made her feel like trash on her worst day? The man she had married under pressure was not the beggar the village gossiped about. He was a millionaire in disguise. But knowing the truth didn't make it easier. It made everything more confusing. She sat by the window staring at the moon. Her chest burned with anger, but her heart was heavy with shame. All those days she avoided him, insulted him, cried herself to sleep. He silently bore it all. And for what? Some twisted test of character? A game of emotions? The next morning, Mako waited at the doorstep. He didn't say much, just handed her a plain envelope and walked away. Zahira opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a brochure for the most elite fashion school in the city, along with an admission letter, already paid for, her name printed in bold, her dream handed to her on a silver platter. She stared at the letter like it was a trap. Why now? After everything? Later that evening, they sat across from each other in silence. Zahira finally broke it. Why are you doing this? After lying to me, humiliating me, testing me? Mako looked tired, but not cold. Because I know I hurt you, and I can't change that. But I don't want to control your life. I want to give it back to you. Do what you were born to do, Zahira. Become what this village said you could never be. She clenched her fists. You made me feel worthless. I know. You made me marry a man I didn't love. I gave your father an option. He made the choice. I'm not proud of it. Zahira's eyes filled with tears, but she refused to let them fall. So what now? You expect me to love you? No, Mako said softly. I expect you to choose, freely. Her heart pounded. This was it. Her chance, her freedom. Her dream was no longer a fantasy. It was real. All she had to do was say yes. Take the offer, leave the village, leave him. She could start fresh, without ever looking back. But something inside her held her back. Not guilt, not pity. Something deeper. He never forced her. He never asked for anything in return. He watched her struggle, but never interfered, never crossed a line. He just waited. Could she really walk away from someone who saw her strength when she felt weak? Someone who gave her wings even when she threw stones at him? Zahira stood up, the letter still in her hand. She walked to the door, took a deep breath, and looked back at Mako. I need time, she said. He nodded. Take all the time you need. As she stepped outside, the village looked different. Not because it had changed, but because she had. Her heart was still a storm, but somewhere in that chaos, a quiet question had started growing. Was this the beginning of love, or the final act of revenge? Only time would tell. Zahira stood backstage, her heart pounding louder than the music echoing through the hall. The lights were blinding, the crowd buzzing with excitement. Cameras flashed, models adjusted their dresses, and stylists ran around like bees. But in that chaos, Zahira felt calm. Not because everything was perfect, but because she had finally arrived. Her designs, stitched with dreams and pain, were moments away from stepping onto the runway at Lagos Fashion Week. A place she once saw only in magazines, now carried her name in glowing letters. It hadn't been easy. The journey from the dusty village roads of Obalanga to the glossy floor of a fashion capital was full of tears, doubts, and long nights. But she remembered the day she made the decision, the moment she accepted Mako's offer, not because of the money, not because she owed him, but because she had finally seen him not as a beggar, not as a trickster, but as a man with a scarred past and a generous soul, a man who had nothing to gain, yet gave her everything. When she left the village, people whispered again, she's going to run away from her husband. Now she'll forget us. Money changes people. Zahira heard them all, but kept walking. She didn't leave to forget the village. She left to prove that dreams born in the mud could shine under the spotlight. Fashion school in the city was a new world. At first, she felt like she didn't belong. Everyone spoke fast, dressed expensive, and seemed so confident. But every time she wanted to give up, she remembered Mako's quiet face, her mother's recovering smile, and the girl she used to be. the girl who sketched dresses in the sand because she had no paper. And slowly, she rose. Her designs began to get noticed. Her teachers praised her vision. She worked harder than anyone, cutting fabric until her fingers ached, staying up all night sewing pieces by hand. Her first mini collection, inspired by village life, turned heads. She mixed bold patterns with earthy textures, telling her story not with words, but with thread and colour. Then the call came. Lagos Fashion Week wanted her collection. Zahira cried the whole night, not out of fear, but disbelief. She had made it, and she didn't go alone. Mako stood in the crowd that night, wearing a crisp black suit, no longer hiding in rags. He didn't say much, but his eyes were full of pride. Zahira saw him from backstage and smiled. The girl who once thought she was trapped now felt more free than ever. When the models finally walked the runway wearing her designs, the crowd erupted. People clapped, cheered, some even stood up. But Zahira didn't hear the noise. In her head, she was back in Obalanga, under the old mango tree, sketching her first dress with a stick on the ground. News of her success spread like wildfire. Social media lit up with her story. Reporters called her the village flame that lit the fashion world. And back in Obalanga, the same villagers who once mocked her now told anyone who would listen. We always knew Zahira was special. Mako, he's a wise man, we always said that. They make a strong couple. Zahira laughed when she heard it, not out of mockery, but forgiveness. She returned to Obalanga months later, not as the girl who left crying, but as a woman who had conquered. She didn't come back to show off. She came back to inspire. She built a small fashion school near the market, where young girls could learn design, stitching, and the power of believing in themselves. And when asked why she did it, Zahira simply said, "Because every big dream starts small, and mine started right here, in this very dust." The village of Obalanga never looked the same again, and neither did Zahira. Thanks for watching till the end. If you loved this story, there's more waiting for you. Click on the videos on your screen now. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss another twist. See you in the next one.